Ancient humans slept in 2 shifts. Full documentary narration. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night. Not because of a nightmare. Not because of a strange noise. And not because you have trouble sleeping. You simply wake up. The room is quiet. The world outside is dark. Everyone around you remains asleep. You glance at the clock. It's 2 in the morning. Most people today would immediately assume something is wrong. Perhaps stress is keeping them awake. Maybe they drank too much coffee. Or perhaps they are suffering from insomnia. But for most of human history, waking up in the middle of the night wasn't considered a problem at all. In fact, there was a time when people expected it. For thousands of years, human beings may have divided their nights into 2 separate periods of sleep. A first sleep, a period of wakefulness, and then a second sleep. It sounds strange to modern ears. Yet the more historians, scientists, and anthropologists investigate the past, the more evidence they find that our ancestors experienced the night very differently from us. Tonight, we're going to travel back into that forgotten world. A world without electricity. A world illuminated only by fire, moonlight, and stars. A world where darkness shaped every aspect of life. And a world where waking up at midnight might have been one of the most normal things a person could do. Chapter 1. A world without electricity. To understand ancient sleep, we first need to understand ancient darkness. Today, darkness is optional. At the touch of a switch, entire buildings burst into light. Cities glow so brightly that they can be seen from space. Even in the middle of the night, millions of people remain awake, scrolling through phones, watching television, or working beneath artificial lighting. Ancient humans lived in a completely different reality. When the sun disappeared, darkness arrived. And it arrived quickly. There were no streetlights, no screens, no lamps glowing in every room. Only fire. And beyond the reach of that fire lay a world of shadows. As evening approached, families gathered together near their camps or inside caves. Children stayed close to their parents. Hunters returned home. The day's activities slowly came to an end. Night was not simply the absence of daylight. It was an entirely different environment. One that demanded caution. One that encouraged rest. And one that shaped the way humans slept. Chapter 2. Why ancient nights were so long. For our ancestors, winter nights could feel endless. In some regions, darkness lasted 14 hours or more. Imagine going to bed shortly after sunset. You might already have slept for 5 or 6 hours by midnight. For many people, that's enough rest to naturally wake up. Modern society assumes that uninterrupted sleep is normal. But ancient conditions may have encouraged something else entirely. A segmented pattern. A rhythm divided into separate stages. As the fire burned low and the stars crossed the sky, people often reached a natural point of wakefulness. And when they woke, they didn't panic. They didn't wonder if something was wrong. Because for them, waking in the middle of the night was simply part of the night itself. Chapter 3. The First Sleep. The first sleep began soon after darkness settled over the landscape. Families wrapped themselves in animal skins. The warmth of the fire slowly faded. Conversations grew quieter. One by one, people drifted into sleep. This first period of rest was often deep and restorative. The body recovered from the demands of hunting, gathering, traveling, and surviving. For several hours, the camp remained silent. Only the crackling of the fire and the sounds of the wilderness broke the stillness. Then something remarkable happened. People began to wake. Not all at once. Not suddenly, but naturally, almost as if their bodies expected it. Chapter 4. The Midnight Awakening. Sometime around midnight, many ancient humans found themselves awake. The fire might have dwindled to glowing embers. Moonlight might have spilled into the cave entrance. Outside, the world remained dark and quiet. Yet inside, a few eyes opened. To modern people, this might sound like insomnia. To ancient humans, it was simply another part of the night. There was no urgency to return to sleep. No anxiety. No frustration. The midnight awakening was expected, and people used this time in surprisingly interesting ways. Chapter 5. What people did during the night break. Imagine opening your eyes in the middle of the night. The fire has nearly burned out. The stars shine brightly outside. The rest of your family sleeps peacefully nearby. What would you do? For ancient humans, this period between the first and second sleep was not wasted time. In fact, it may have been one of the quietest and most reflective parts of the entire day. Without the distractions of daylight, people suddenly found themselves alone with their thoughts. Some quietly added wood to the fire. Keeping the fire alive was important. A dying fire meant less warmth, less protection, and less comfort during the coldest hours of the night. Others checked the surrounding area. A quick glance outside the cave or camp could reveal changes in the weather, the movement of animals, or signs of danger. Many simply sat quietly. Imagine that for a moment. No phones, no conversations, no work, no endless stream of information competing for attention. Just silence. For perhaps the first time all day, people could simply think. Researchers studying historical accounts from later centuries discovered that many people used this midnight period for prayer, meditation, or reflection. Some discussed dreams. Others talked quietly with family members who happened to be awake. A few may have repaired tools, mended clothing, or prepared for the next day's activities. The atmosphere was very different from daytime life. Everything moved more slowly. The darkness encouraged calmness. The world felt larger and quieter. Perhaps this is one reason why waking at night did not feel stressful. There was no expectation that every moment needed to be productive. There was no pressure to immediately fall back asleep. The night had its own rhythm. And for ancient humans, this rhythm included periods of wakefulness. Yet one question remains. Why would the human body develop such a pattern in the first place? To answer that, we need to look at what modern science has discovered about sleep itself. Chapter 6, The Science Behind Two Sleeps. For a long time, scientists assumed that sleeping in one continuous block was the natural human pattern. But in the 1990s, researchers began conducting fascinating experiments. Participants were placed in environments without artificial light. No televisions, no smartphones, no bright electric lamps. Instead, they experienced long periods of darkness similar to what humans would have encountered before modern technology. Something unexpected happened. After several weeks, many participants naturally adopted a segmented sleep pattern. They slept for several hours, then woke up, remained awake for a period, and eventually returned to sleep. The pattern looked remarkably similar to descriptions found in historical records. This doesn't prove that all ancient humans slept this way. Human sleep has always varied between individuals and cultures, but it suggests something important. The human brain may be more flexible than we once believed. Perhaps uninterrupted 8-hour sleep is not the only natural pattern. Perhaps our ancestors followed biological rhythms that modern life has largely hidden. Scientists also discovered that the period between sleeps was often surprisingly peaceful. Participants reported feeling calm rather than anxious. Many described a dreamlike state of relaxed awareness, a state somewhere between sleeping and waking. This is particularly interesting because modern people often experience the exact opposite. When we wake up at night, we frequently become worried. We check the clock. We calculate how many hours remain before morning. We stress about not sleeping. Ironically, the anxiety itself may make returning to sleep more difficult. Ancient humans likely had no such concerns. They simply accepted the night as it came. And in doing so, they may have experienced a very different relationship with sleep than we do today. Yet biology was only part of the story. Survival also played a role, because ancient nights were not always peaceful, and one small flame often stood between safety and danger. Chapter 7. The Importance of Fire. For ancient humans, fire was much more than a source of warmth. It was survival itself. A fire provided light. It cooked food. It frightened predators. It created a gathering place for families and communities. And during the long hours of darkness, it offered comfort against the unknown. But fire required attention. A neglected fire could die, and once it died, relighting it was not always easy. Some ancient groups spent enormous effort preserving flames. In certain cultures, carrying embers from place to place was easier than starting a completely new fire. This meant someone often needed to check the flames throughout the night. A midnight awakening offered the perfect opportunity. A few sticks could be added. The embers could be stirred. The warmth could be maintained until morning. Outside the firelight, danger waited. Wolves, hyenas, big cats. Not every night brought a threat, but the possibility always existed. Being briefly awake during the night may have helped communities remain aware of their surroundings. It provided an additional layer of security, a chance to notice unusual sounds, a chance to react before a problem became serious. For ancient humans, sleep and survival were closely connected. The night was not merely a time for rest. It was a time that required balance. Enough sleep to recover, enough awareness to stay alive. And somewhere between those two needs, the pattern of first sleep and second sleep may have emerged naturally. Chapter 8. Dreams Between Sleeps. If there was one thing ancient humans could never fully explain, it was dreams. Imagine living tens of thousands of years ago. You close your eyes beside a fire. A few hours later, you wake up. But before waking, your mind has taken you somewhere else entirely. You have spoken to people who are not there. You have hunted animals that do not exist. You have traveled across impossible landscapes. You have seen the dead return to life. And for a few moments, it all felt completely real. To modern people, dreams are usually understood as a natural process of the brain. But ancient humans had no scientific explanation. As far as they knew, dreams might have been messages, warnings, visions, or even journeys to another world. The midnight period between first and second sleep may have made dreams feel even more important, because when people woke naturally, those dreams remained fresh in their minds. They could sit quietly beside the fire and think about what they had seen. They could share dreams with family members who were also awake. They could search for meaning in strange symbols and mysterious images. Many ancient cultures believed dreams contained valuable information. A successful hunt might first appear in a dream. A danger might reveal itself through a vision. An ancestor might offer guidance during the night. Whether these beliefs were true or not, dreams clearly held enormous significance. And perhaps there was another reason for this. The period between sleeps often placed people in a unique mental state. Not fully asleep, not fully awake. Modern researchers have found that people awakened naturally during the night sometimes experience a deep sense of relaxation and introspection. Thoughts flow differently. Memories feel vivid. Ideas seem easier to explore. Ancient humans may have spent countless nights in this state, listening to the fire, watching the stars, reflecting on dreams, wondering about the mysteries of the world around them. In many ways, the midnight hours may have been humanity's earliest classroom, a place where stories were born, where beliefs took shape, and where people tried to understand forces far larger than themselves. Yet not every group experienced the night in exactly the same way. Across different regions and cultures, humans developed unique sleeping habits. And surprisingly, many of them shared similarities. Chapter 9. How Different Cultures Slept. One of the most fascinating discoveries made by historians is that segmented sleep appears in many different places and periods of history. People separated by oceans. People speaking different languages. People living in completely different environments. And yet, many described remarkably similar nighttime routines. In medieval Europe, written records often referred to a first sleep and a second sleep. People discussed these terms as if everyone already knew what they meant. There was no need for explanation. The pattern was simply part of everyday life. Travelers visiting traditional communities in later centuries reported similar observations. In some villages, people naturally woke during the night. They talked quietly, tended fires, or completed small tasks before returning to bed. Even among hunter-gatherer groups, sleep schedules often varied according to season, weather, and social needs. Rather than following a rigid timetable, people adapted to their surroundings. This flexibility may have been one of humanity's greatest strengths. Ancient humans did not live according to clocks. They lived according to nature. The sun, the moon, the weather, the changing seasons. Their sleeping patterns reflected that reality. And while not every culture followed exactly the same routine, many shared a common understanding. Sleep was not always one uninterrupted event. It could occur in stages. It could change throughout the year. It could adapt to circumstances. Modern society often expects everyone to sleep in exactly the same way. Ancient humans rarely had that expectation. They accepted variation as normal. But despite this flexibility, there was one danger they all understood. Sleeping too deeply could sometimes come at a cost. And in the prehistoric world, that cost could be deadly. Chapter 10. The Dangers of Sleeping Too Deeply. Tonight, before you go to bed, consider something. You will probably sleep in a locked building, protected by walls, protected by technology, protected by emergency services. Ancient humans had none of those advantages. For them, the night carried real risks. A storm could arrive unexpectedly. A predator could approach the camp. A fire could begin to fade. An enemy group could move nearby. Remaining completely unaware for 10 or 12 uninterrupted hours was not always ideal. This does not mean ancient humans deliberately avoided sleep. Far from it. Sleep was essential for survival. Without it, concentration declined. Reaction time slowed. Decision-making suffered. The body needed rest. But survival also required awareness. A community in which everyone slept deeply at exactly the same time might be vulnerable. Researchers studying traditional hunter-gatherer groups have noticed something interesting. People often sleep at slightly different times. Some stay awake later. Others wake earlier. At many points during the night, at least one person is awake. This natural overlap creates a form of protection. Someone is always available to notice unusual sounds or unexpected dangers. Ancient communities may have benefited from similar patterns. The midnight awakening could provide an opportunity to check the surroundings, to listen, to observe, to ensure everything remained safe. Most nights passed peacefully, but when danger appeared, those brief moments of awareness could matter enormously. The night was never entirely predictable, and that unpredictability shaped human behavior for thousands of years. Yet eventually, something happened that began changing humanity's relationship with darkness. Slowly at first, then dramatically, the arrival of cities, and with them a new kind of night. Chapter 11. When cities changed everything. For most of human history, darkness ruled the night, and cities began to grow. At first, the change was small. A few more fires, a few more lamps, a few more people staying awake after sunset. But over time, urban life transformed the rhythm of human existence. In towns and cities, activity did not always stop when the sun disappeared. Merchants worked later. Travelers arrived after dark. Public gatherings continued into the evening. Artificial light became increasingly common. Candles illuminated homes. Oil lamps brightened streets. The night slowly became less dark. For the first time, large numbers of people could remain active long after sunset. This changed sleeping habits. Bedtimes shifted later. Daily schedules became more structured. The natural cues that had guided humans for thousands of years began losing influence. Darkness no longer signaled the end of the day. People started compressing their sleep into a single block. The old rhythm of first sleep and second sleep gradually became less common. Not because human biology suddenly changed, but because society did. The transformation would accelerate even further in the centuries ahead. And one invention, more than any other, would reshape sleep forever. The Industrial Revolution. Chapter 12. The Industrial Revolution ends first sleep. For thousands of years, humans organized their lives around nature. The sun rose. People woke. The sun set. People rested. It was a rhythm that had guided countless generations. Then came the Industrial Revolution, and suddenly, nature was no longer in charge. Factories appeared across Europe and North America. Large machines operated day and night. Workers were expected to arrive at specific times. Productivity became increasingly important. For the first time in history, millions of people were required to follow schedules dictated by clocks rather than sunlight. This was a profound change. Imagine being an ancient hunter-gatherer. Your day begins when daylight appears. Your sleep follows natural patterns. Now imagine being a factory worker in the 19th century. A bell rings at dawn. You must be at work by a certain hour. It doesn't matter how you slept. It doesn't matter what your body wants. The clock decides. Over time, society began valuing uninterrupted sleep. Workers needed to function efficiently during long shifts. Employers wanted predictable schedules. Schools operated according to fixed timetables. Cities became increasingly active after dark. Artificial lighting improved. Gas lamps illuminated streets. Factories remained open later. Eventually, electric light transformed everything. For the first time, darkness no longer limited human activity. People stayed awake later than their ancestors ever could. Bedtimes moved further into the night. The long hours of darkness that once encouraged segmented sleep began to disappear. Gradually, first sleep and second sleep faded from everyday life. Many people forgot the pattern had ever existed. What had once been normal became unusual, and what had once been unusual became normal. The modern 8-hour sleep schedule was born. Yet despite all these changes, some traces of the old rhythm may still remain hidden inside us. And perhaps that explains why so many people struggle with sleep today. Chapter 13. Why modern sleep feels broken. Have you ever woken up at 3 in the morning and immediately felt worried? Perhaps you looked at the clock. Perhaps you calculated how many hours remained before your alarm would ring. Perhaps you became frustrated because you weren't asleep. If so, you're not alone. Millions of people experience this exact situation. Modern society teaches us that good sleep means remaining unconscious for the entire night. Anything else feels like failure. But what if that assumption isn't completely true? What if occasional nighttime wakefulness is not necessarily a sign that something is wrong? Researchers studying historical sleep patterns have raised an interesting possibility. Some nighttime awakenings may reflect an ancient rhythm that humans once accepted as normal. Of course, this doesn't mean all sleep problems are natural. Stress, medical conditions, anxiety, and lifestyle factors can certainly interfere with healthy sleep. But it does suggest that waking briefly during the night may not always be cause for alarm. The problem may not be the awakening itself. The problem may be our reaction to it. Ancient humans likely didn't stare at clocks. They didn't worry about work emails. They didn't calculate how much sleep they were losing. They simply experienced a period of wakefulness and then returned to sleep when their bodies were ready. Modern life often creates the opposite response. The moment we wake up, our minds become active. We start thinking, planning, worrying, analyzing. The result is a cycle that can make falling asleep much harder. Ironically, the fear of being awake sometimes causes more problems than the awakening itself. This raises an intriguing question. Were ancient humans actually better sleepers than we are? The answer is more complicated than it might seem. Chapter 14. Could ancient humans sleep better than us? At first glance, it is tempting to imagine ancient sleep as ideal. No smartphones, no social media, no late-night notifications, no glowing screens, just darkness, silence, and nature. But reality was more complicated. Ancient humans certainly enjoyed some advantages. Their exposure to natural sunlight helped regulate biological rhythms. They spent more time outdoors. They experienced less artificial light at night. Their daily activities were closely connected to natural cycles. All of these factors may have supported healthier sleep patterns. Yet ancient sleep also came with serious challenges. Winter nights were freezing. Storms could disrupt rest. Predators posed genuine dangers. Food shortages created stress. Illnesses often went untreated. Many sleeping places were uncomfortable by modern standards. Animal skins and grass beds could not compete with today's mattresses. Ancient humans may have enjoyed more natural sleep schedules, but they did not necessarily enjoy more comfortable sleep. The truth lies somewhere in between. Modern humans benefit from safety, warmth, and medical knowledge. Ancient humans benefited from closer alignment with natural rhythms. Each world offered advantages. Each world carried disadvantages. Perhaps the goal is not to return to the past. Perhaps the goal is simply to learn from it. Because hidden within the story of ancient sleep is a reminder that human beings evolved under conditions very different from those we experience today. An understanding that history may help us better understand ourselves. Chapter 15, The Lost Night. Tonight, before you fall asleep, consider how unusual modern life really is. For most of human history, darkness shaped every aspect of existence. People gathered around fires. They watched the stars. They listened to the sounds of the night. And many of them likely slept in two separate shifts. A first sleep, a quiet period of wakefulness, and a second sleep. To them, this rhythm felt ordinary. No one called it disorder. No one worried that something was wrong. It was simply part of being human. Over centuries, cities grew. Technology advanced. Artificial light spread across the world. The ancient night gradually disappeared. With it disappeared many habits our ancestors once considered normal. Today, when we wake in the middle of the night, we often assume we are experiencing a modern problem. But perhaps, in some cases, we are experiencing something ancient. An echo from a time before electricity. A reminder of how humans once lived. A memory carried quietly through thousands of generations. The story of sleep is not just the story of rest. It is the story of adaptation. The story of survival. The story of humanity itself. From the glow of prehistoric campfires to the bright lights of modern cities, our relationship with the night has never stopped evolving. Yet somewhere deep inside us, traces of the old rhythms may still remain. The next time you find yourself awake beneath the stars, listening to the silence of the night, remember this. You may be sharing an experience with countless ancestors stretching back through tens of thousands of years. People who sat beside fading fires. People who watched the moon cross the sky. People who woke in the darkness, not with fear, but with quiet acceptance. And then, when the time felt right, closed their eyes once more and drifted peacefully into their second sleep. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the ancient night. And as always, sleep well.